It begins with something so small that it feels almost insignificant. The thought, not spoken out loud, not written anywhere, just a quiet, private idea that exists only inside someone's mind. A man sits at a table, looking at his phone, pretending to listen to the person across from him. He nods at the right moments, says the right words, keeps the conversation moving the way people always do. But inside, he is thinking something else. He is bored. He regrets being there. He is thinking about leaving. And then, it happens. The thought appears, not in his mind, but outside of it, right above his head. Clear, visible, impossible to ignore. I don't want to be here. The person across from him stops talking. The silence is immediate, heavy, unavoidable. At first, neither of them understands what they are seeing. The man looks up, confused, following the other person's gaze. And when he sees it, when he sees his own thought, written in the air as if it has always been there, something inside him tightens, because it was never meant to be seen. He opens his mouth to explain, to deny it, to say something else, something safer, something controlled. But before he can speak, another thought appears. I wish I had stayed home. There is no delay, no filter, no control. Every secret thought becomes visible the moment it forms. Within minutes, the same thing begins to happen everywhere. Across cities, across countries, across the entire world. People's thoughts begin to surface, not as sounds, not as whispers, but as visible statements that hover above them, following them, changing constantly as their minds move. At first, confusion spreads faster than fear. People look around, seeing fragments of thoughts above strangers, above friends, above family members. Some laugh, assuming it is a strange visual illusion, something temporary, something that will disappear once the brain adjusts. But it does not disappear. It intensifies. More thoughts appear, more secrets, more truths that were never meant to leave the mind. A woman walking down the street suddenly sees the thoughts of the people around her. I don't trust anyone. I hate my job. I regret what I did. I wish they didn't know. Each sentence hangs in the air, shifting as quickly as the mind changes direction. And then she sees her own. I'm scared. The moment it appears, something changes, because now it is real, not just to her, but to everyone. Panic begins to rise, not because people are afraid of what they see, but because they realize what others can now see about them. The private space inside the mind, something that has always been untouchable, unreachable, completely personal, is gone. Within the first hour, communication begins to break down. Not because people stop speaking, but because speaking becomes unnecessary. Everything that matters is already visible. Every hidden opinion, every suppressed emotion, every secret intention. Conversations collapse under the weight of complete transparency. You ask a question, but before the answer comes, you already see the truth. And sometimes that truth is not what you expected, not what you wanted. Relationships are the first to fracture. A couple sits together, both silent, both staring at the thoughts appearing above each other. I don't love you the way I used to. I've been thinking about leaving. I didn't tell you everything. The words change constantly, reflecting every shift in thought, every moment of doubt, every hidden feeling that would have once stayed buried. There is no space to process, no time to soften the truth, no way to hide. And that immediacy destroys the balance that relationships depend on. Because thoughts are not always final. They are not always stable. They change. They pass. But now, every passing thought becomes visible, permanent, real, and impossible to ignore. Friendships suffer the same fate. People begin to see what others truly think about them, not just the good, but the uncomfortable, the judgmental, the contradictory. I don't like how they act. I feel better when they're not around. I pretend to care. These thoughts might have once passed unnoticed. temporary and unimportant. Now they define everything, because once seen, they cannot be unseen. At the same time, the world of work collapses into confusion. Offices become silent, filled with people who are no longer able to maintain professional distance. Thoughts about coworkers, managers, clients, all become visible in real time. I don't respect them. They don't know what they're doing. I'm only here for the money. Authority weakens instantly because respect cannot be faked. And now it cannot be hidden. Meetings become unbearable, not because of what is said, but because of what is revealed. Every doubt, every criticism, every hidden agenda, all visible, all immediate, all uncontrollable. Governments face an even greater crisis. Leaders who once relied on controlled messaging, careful language, and strategic communication are suddenly exposed in ways they cannot manage. Press conferences turn into something unrecognizable. Questions are asked, but before answers are given, the thoughts of the person responding are already visible. I don't know. We are not prepared. We are trying to stay in control. Public trust does not grow. It fractures, because while the truth is now visible, it is not always reassuring. Markets react instantly, not to statements, but to thoughts. Investors no longer wait for official reports. They see uncertainty, doubt, fear in real time, and act immediately. Stability disappears, replaced by constant, unpredictable movement, because thoughts are unstable, and now they control everything. At the same time, something deeper begins to change. The way people see themselves, because for the first time, there is no difference between internal and external identity. Who you are inside is visible outside, constantly, without pause, without control. And that exposure forces people to confront something they have always been able to avoid. The truth about their own minds, not the version they present, not the version they believe, but the raw, unfiltered stream of thoughts that define them in ways they never wanted to admit. Some people cannot handle it. They withdraw. They avoid others. They try to isolate themselves to reduce the number of people who can see their thoughts. But even alone, the thoughts are still there, still visible, still real, because this is not about others anymore. It is about the loss of privacy at the deepest possible level, the mind. And as the first day comes to an end, as the world struggles to adapt to a reality where nothing can be hidden, one realization begins to settle in. Secrets were never just lies. They were protection. And without them, everything is exposed. Not just what we do, but who we are. And that may be something humanity was never meant to see so clearly. It does not take long for people to understand that the problem is not the truth itself. It is the speed. Thoughts were never meant to be seen the moment they appear. They were meant to pass, to change, to disappear before they could define anything. But now every idea, every doubt, every fleeting impulse becomes visible the instant it exists. And that changes how people experience their own minds. At first, they try to control it. They focus. They attempt to think carefully, slowly, deliberately, as if they can shape what appears above them by sheer discipline. Some succeed for a few seconds, forcing their thoughts into simple, neutral patterns. I am calm. I am focused. I am in control. But the mind does not work like that. Not for long, because thoughts are not stable. They move. They contradict each other. They shift without warning. And the moment concentration breaks, the real stream returns. I'm tired of pretending. I don't trust them. I wish I could disappear. The effort to control it becomes exhausting. Not physically, but mentally, because now every thought carries consequence. And over time, people begin to realize something unsettling. They are not just being exposed to others. They are being exposed to themselves. The image they had of who they are begins to fracture. People who believed they were kind begin to see moments of judgment. irritation, indifference. People who saw themselves as confident noticed doubt, fear, insecurity moving constantly beneath the surface. It is not that these things are new. They were always there, but now they are undeniable. And that realization creates a new kind of discomfort, not fear of others, but discomfort with the self. At the same time, society begins to reorganize in response to this constant exposure. Silence becomes the most valuable skill, not the absence of speech, but the absence of thought. People search for ways to quiet their minds, to reduce the flow, to create moments where nothing appears above them. Meditation, once a practice for calm, becomes a necessity for privacy. Entire communities form around mental control, teaching techniques to slow thought, to empty the mind, to reduce visibility. Because in a world where every thought is public, control of thought becomes control of identity. Those who master it gain something close to privacy. Those who cannot remain exposed. This creates a new kind of inequality, not based on wealth, not based on power, but based on mental discipline. Some people learn to present almost nothing, their thoughts reduced to simple, neutral patterns that reveal little about who they are. Others remain open, their minds constantly shifting, revealing everything in real time. And this difference begins to shape how people are treated. Trust shifts, not toward those who are honest, but toward those who are controlled, because unpredictability becomes dangerous. If someone's thoughts are constantly changing, constantly revealing conflicting ideas, it becomes difficult to understand them, to rely on them, to feel stable around them. Consistency becomes the new form of trust. At the same time, relationships begin to rebuild, but in a completely different way. Without secrets, people learn to accept the instability of thought. They begin to understand that a thought is not a decision, not a final truth, but a moment. Over time, those who stay connected learn to see patterns instead of individual thoughts. Not what appears once, but what appears consistently. Love, for example, changes. It is no longer defined by perfect thoughts, by constant certainty, by the absence of doubt. Instead, it is defined by persistence, by the repeated presence of care, even when other thoughts appear and disappear.
I'm annoyed. I'm tired.
I still choose you. This layering of thought creates a new kind of understanding. Messier, more complex, but also more real. At the same time, systems begin to adapt. Workplaces change their expectations. Instead of judging individuals by isolated thoughts, they begin to focus on long-term patterns of behavior. Governments restructure communication, moving away from controlled messaging and toward continuous transparency, where thoughts are expected to fluctuate. The world becomes less about single moments and more about continuity. But even with this adaptation, something remains. Constant pressure. Because no matter how much people learn to interpret thoughts differently, the fact does not change. Nothing is private. Not even the most temporary idea. Not even the most fragile doubt. And that has a lasting effect on the human mind. People begin to think differently, not just controlling thoughts, but shaping them at the source. Over time, the brain adapts, becoming more structured, more deliberate, less chaotic. Random thoughts decrease. Impulses become weaker. The mind becomes quieter, not because it is forced to be, but because it learns to protect itself. And in that process, something begins to fade. Spontaneity, creativity, the wild, unpredictable flow of ideas that once defined human thinking starts to diminish. Because chaos, when exposed, becomes uncomfortable. And so the mind chooses order. But order comes with a cost. Because in removing chaos, it also removes possibility. The world becomes more stable, more predictable, more controlled, but also less imaginative, less surprising, less alive. And as this new balance settles, as humanity adapts to a life without secrets, a final realization begins to form. Secrets were not just about hiding things from others. They were about giving the mind space to exist freely, a space where thoughts could be imperfect, contradictory, unfinished, without consequence. And without that space, the mind changes. It becomes quieter, safer, more controlled, but also smaller, because when every thought must survive being seen, only certain thoughts remain, and everything else disappears before it can ever become real.